The influence of the arts throughout the Renaissance. So, if you know anything about the Renaissance, you know about the impact it had on Western culture, especially considering how the Black Plague had just rampaged through the whole world, taking a major toll on the spirit and population of the European continent. It wasn't until 1351 that the bubonic plague finally began to settle down and the Renaissance era had truly began.
Moving on to some artists whose art still live their legacies onto today, we will talk about three, including Sandro Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo.
We first will go to Florence, Italy, where the Renaissance is credited to be the first place to begin to flourish and where Alessandro di Mariano Filippi was born, or Sandro Botticelli. Taking the nickname of his older brother Botticello, Botticelli was born on March 1, 1445, to a tanner named Mariano di Vanni de Amadeo Filippi and homemaker Smeralda Filippi. Shortly after leaving school, Botticelli became an apprentice of Filippo Lippi, where he began to explore his art style. Creating fresco and panel paintings, Botticelli was able to be exposed to many different art forms, allowing for him to develop his own. He also moved from Florence to Spoleto to further his research on the arts and took to creating a robust art style surrounded by the concept of ideal beauty at the time, a far cry from Lippi's own style. One of Botticelli's most popular art pieces was The Birth of Venus, which he had made with tempera paint from 1484 to 1486. This painting was heavily inspired by Roman mythology and seemed to have Venus personify truth, and even seemed to be used in another painting of his named Calumny of Apelles. Botticelli died 15 years after finishing Calumny of Apelles on May 17, 1510, at the age of 65.
Moving on to Leonardo da Vinci, whose real name was Leonardo di Serapio da Vinci. He was born near Vinci, Italy, on April 15, 1452. He became an apprentice of a sculptor named Andrea del
Verrocchio
at 14 and continued to work
Verrocchio
for 9 years in Florence, and likely met Sandro Botticelli while there. Da Vinci was famous for being a real Renaissance man due to being both a scientist and an artist, applying the scientific method to every aspect of life. It was most likely during his apprenticeship that Da Vinci has been exposed to many of the ideas that inspired him throughout his life, including mechanics, carpentry, metallurgy, architectural drafting, and chemistry. Some of Da Vinci's famous paintings include Mona Lisa and The Last Supper. Da Vinci's fascination with scientists along the arts also helped with his creation of the
Vitruvian
Man, which was a demonstration of
Vitruvius
findings in his book De Architectura. Da Vinci died on May 2, 1519, in Toulouse, France, at the age of 67.
On March 6, 1475, Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni, or Michelangelo, was born in Caprice near Arezzo, Tuscany. When he was 6, he was sent to a grammar school in Florence, but was not that interested in the topics that he studied, and rather liked art that he found in churches surrounding him. He was 13 when his father sent him to a Florentine's workshop to learn fresco painting. Afterwards, Michelangelo moved to Lorenzo the Magnificent's palace to study classical sculptures with Bertoldo di Giovanni. There, he was able to be exposed to many different influences, including Roman and Greek antiquities. In his time at the palace, he was able to practice portraying the human form and even studied human corpses. As time passed, Michelangelo went from Venice and then on to Bologna. In 1498, Rome, a 23-year-old Michelangelo began sculpting Pieta out of marble, which pictures the Virgin Mary crying over Jesus after he had just died, and finished in 1499. A few years later, in 1501, Michelangelo began work on David, one of his most notable works, and finished in 1504. The first massive statue made since ancient times was meant to depict the moment that David had decided to battle Goliath, and was a symbol of Florentine freedom. Another one of Michelangelo's most famous works is the Creation of Adam, which, amongst other pieces in the Sistine Chapel, cumulatively took 4 years. This specific art piece, however, depicts Adam and God's hands stretched towards one another and was meant to show off all of Michelangelo's work on portraying human bodies. The influence of Michelangelo cannot be measured, but most definitely set a precedent for art for the rest of history, with numerous people taking inspiration from his art throughout the Renaissance, the Baroque period, and even now. Michelangelo died on February 18, 1564, at the age of 78.
So you can see, many famous Italian painters/sculptors made a huge impact within the Renaissance era and helped shape the future of the West's culture.